Carman Commission, you'll recall, was set up by the three main pro-union parties to consider how devolution might develop in ways other than towards the SNP's aim of independence. I'm joined live now by the Shadow Scottish Secretary, David Mundell, MP. In Edinburgh we have Jeremy Purvis, MSP, who speaks on economics for the Liberal Democrats, and also here in Glasgow, Pauline McNeill, MSP of Scottish Labour, whose portfolio these days includes the Carman Commission. Well, here it is, the full 60 pages from Professor Anton Muscatelli and his team. Did you learn anything new from this?
Yes, I do. I think it represents good progress. It is, of course, an independent report into the Carman Commission itself.
What's new?
What's new? I think that what it does is it sets out a kind of neutral stance on the various funding models, and I think it gives a fairly objective view of the Barnett formula, the pros and cons, and it also looks at the opposite end of the spectrum too, about the implications of moving to full fiscal autonomy. So I think it's very, very helpful, because the funding of the Scottish Parliament, of course, within Carman, and making a stronger devolved settlement, which is what we're about, there has to be, I think, a central look at how we fund the Scottish Parliament. So we're pretty open-minded about the way forward in that, and I think the report helpfully sets out the various options, and a very complex report with pros and cons of all the different models.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that helps politicians or anyone else make up their minds, but let's deal with some of those options. Full fiscal autonomy. Does that equal the end of the union, as the report suggests, David Mundell?
I think if Scotland effectively raised all its own taxes and was responsible for its own benefit system, I mean, that would be a fundamental plank of the United Kingdom gone.
Is that how you define full fiscal autonomy?
Well, I think what we're looking to do is not to dismantle the UK tax and benefit system. What we're looking to do is find a way in which it can accommodate the devolved settlement in a way, as Professor Muscatelli said, which is more accountable. And I think that's what we're looking to achieve. I think his paper sets out a number of ways in which that might be achieved. But I mean, I think the fundamental point that comes across is the Barnett formula hasn't been changed for a reason, and that was because there was no simple alternative. The paper confirms that, and if we're going to find a way forward, it is going to be by combining different ways of bringing about that accountability. There is no simple answer.
Well, let's bring in Jeremy Purvis for the Liberal Democrats. Do you accept that transferring lots of tax powers might well be illegal?
No, I think the point that Professor Muscatelli was referring to was if people are taxed twice. So if you can devolve a tax base and the devolved Parliament taxes the same company or the same person at the same time as they're being taxed by the nation, or the parent state, if you wish to call it that, that would be both unfair but also be illegal. I think that's what he was referring to. But
there's not a question over setting taxes at a different level in one part of a state compared to another part?
No, and it's fairly commonplace. I mean, if you look at taxation within other European countries, including Spain, of course, they have a tax basket, and that's fairly commonplace, and they are within federal structures where you have a much greater level of devolution over fiscal power levers within the economy and the tax system for the devolved areas. And the UK is the most centralised state in Europe when it comes to fiscal levers, and that's why we are arguing for effectively a proper home rule settlement. It's what the Steel Commission has established, and now Professor Muscatelli's paper, I think, moves both endorses the Steel Commission's conclusions and moves it forward to what I hope will be a reality.
I don't think it does that explicitly. Pauline McNeill, the report does say that it is increasingly difficult to defend the current arrangements, the centralised state and the Barnett formula, to cut up the cake.
Yes, I think he sets out a fairly neutral position on the Barnett formula, which is the formula that we have now, and suggests that...
I mean, he mentions one or two advantages, but he spends an awful lot more time mentioning the disadvantages.
But it's important to know that the report doesn't come to any specific conclusion at all.
But do you agree that it is increasingly difficult to defend the current arrangements?
No, I don't think it's difficult to defend the current arrangements. I think they've suited us well. In fact, the report does point out that Scotland does well out of the current arrangements.
So no changes to an option from your point of view?
the Labour Party are open-minded about the funding formula for the Scottish Parliament. That's what the Commission is about.
But it may be that you reach a conclusion that actually not to tinker with this is maybe the best option.
Well, the process we're about to go through is to look at the report in detail. Of course, it's only just been published today and it's taken a year to compile. So we're open-minded about the way forward, and we're very conscious of the debate about has the Barnett formula served us well, and perhaps we should debate the question of accountability. We need to make sure that any formula that we support provides the stability, accountability, if we can achieve that.
Okay.
That Scotland has some certainty around its funding, because there would be no point in moving to a new formula if we were worse off as a result of it, and that's why we need to examine it in some detail.
Just to be
see where we would
100%
end up.
clear for people watching at home, are you saying that doing nothing remains an option for the Labour Party?
What I am saying is that we are open-minded
That was a
about
yes/no
all
question.
the options. We remain open-minded about all of the
I'm
options
taking
for
that
funding
as
the
a yes,
Scottish
it's a
Parliament.
possibility.
So it's a possibility, but I would like to emphasise that we're looking at the report, and that's what the Commission is about.
Understood. Likewise, the Conservative Party?
Well, I think what we recognise, as I said before, is it's very easy to criticise the Barnett formula. What you've got to do is come up with an alternative to it which is sustainable, and that's what we hope this process will do.
But you are in search of an alternative.
We'd like to see an alternative to the Barnett formula, but I think David Cameron's made clear on a number of occasions we're not determined to scrap the Barnett formula simply for the sake of doing so.
But wouldn't Scotland lose out if we got rid of the Barnett formula? Wouldn't, if there was some sort of needs assessment, wouldn't we end up with less money?
Well, what I hope will be part of the further work of the Commission, because this report is to inform its work, is actually to look in a more empirical way at some of these issues. There's a lot of statements made about all these issues which are not on an objective basis, a lot of them made by political parties. If the Calman Commission can come up with some objective evidence on these issues, I think that will be very helpful in informing the debate.
Okay, Jeremy Purvis, would you and your party be prepared to cut the amount of money that Scotland gets in order to create a system that you regard as being fairer?
Well, I don't think that would necessarily be the case.
No, but if it turned out to be, if we had this empirical evidence and it meant that we were going to end up with less money, would that be a price worth paying?
There's two assumptions there. One, that we are getting more money than we should do. I don't think that case has been made, but if that is your argument. And the second element is the case that that's predicating on the Scottish Parliament still relying on 100% handouts from the Westminster government. And we